Let me begin by extending a very warm thank you to Dr. Stormy Mildner and the Aspen Institute for the invitation to join you today at the German-American Trade and Tech Conference. I also want to thank our co-host this afternoon, Rudi Hochfliet, the plenipotentiary representative of the beautiful state of Baden-Württemberg in Berlin. We're, of course, here to take a close look at the transatlantic relationship. But before I delve into today's subject, I would be remiss if I didn't first comment about recent developments in the Middle East. As you all know, on Sunday night, the U.S. carried out precision strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities tied to Iran's enrichment efforts. The purpose was to severely degrade Iran's nuclear infrastructure to ensure it does not develop a nuclear weapon. These strikes were measured to prevent broader conflict, deter further escalation, and to keep the door open to diplomacy. As Secretary of State Rubio has made clear, the choice now lies with Iran. A place at the negotiating table and ultimately a deal remain possible, one that benefits the Iranian people and the wider region. Now that a ceasefire appears to be in place, I hope we can see meaningful negotiations resume in the near future. This is obviously a much bigger topic, though, and probably best reserved for another day. Today's focus is the future of U.S.-German tech cooperation and the broader cooperation that is the bedrock of transatlanticism. In fact, this is an apt time for us to be reflecting on the transatlantic relationship, taking stock of past accomplishments and considering how to future-proof the relationship. The Trump administration has been in office for nearly 6 months, and the Merz government for nearly 2, with the direction of foreign policy taking shape in both capitals. With 2 initial meetings between President Trump and Chancellor Merz now in the books, we are beginning a new chapter in our long-standing partnership, and it's the right time to look forward. The rules of our current system were put in place nearly 80 years ago with a very clear goal in mind: to rebuild Europe and create the conditions for a new alliance of nations founded on democratic principles and grounded in the shared prosperity needed to make those democracies resilient. Over the decades, the transatlantic relationship has delivered on this promise beyond expectations. But the world has changed, and for that success to continue, it must adapt to today's needs and realities. We need to modernize transatlanticism, making it fit for purpose in the mid-21st century. In so doing, we must make room for new priorities, address emerging challenges, correct long-standing imbalances, and set clear expectations for a sustainable relationship that can carry us through the next 80 years of partnership and beyond that. Let's start with the positive. Last year, the United States became Germany's largest trading partner for the first time in over a decade. Germany, in turn, remains the U.S.'s largest trading partner in Europe and the U.S.'s 3rd largest source of foreign direct investment. Nearly $658 billion flowed between our economies in 2023, and over 900,000 Americans now work for German companies in the United States. The less positive side, however, is that our trade deficit with the EU continues to grow rapidly. Our persistent deficit in trade in goods with Germany alone reached a record $85 billion last year. As for agricultural trade, while American farmers are among the most efficient in the world, the U.S. deficit in agricultural trade with the EU continues to grow. That's not because American farmers are producing less. They aren't. But rather because they have found it increasingly difficult to get their products onto European supermarket shelves. The U.S. historically has been the world's most open major economy. This persistent trend of rising trade deficits, though, threatens the future of our remarkable shared economic success story, and it demands correction. Yes, it's a policy challenge, but as President Trump has made clear, it's not one that we can ignore. Fixing non-reciprocal tariffs, addressing regulatory asymmetries, and removing structural barriers to trade will allow both countries to benefit more fully. More importantly, it will ensure the relationship continues to enjoy unshakable public support on both sides of the Atlantic, which is what ultimately guarantees its sustainability. As we modernize our thinking about transatlanticism to make it work in today's context, we must also recognize that NATO is an alliance of partners pledged to collective security, each contributing proportionately to collective deterrence and defense. While the U.S. remains firmly committed to the security of our NATO allies, the alliance was never intended to guarantee permanent American subsidies of European security. Europe's years of underinvestment in defense have raised deep questions about the fairness and sustainability of the arrangement, particularly as the U.S. must, both for our own security and for the security of our allies, devote greater resources to deter aggression in the Pacific. For his part, Chancellor Merz demonstrated great vision and leadership in his decision to embrace President Trump's goal of spending 5% of GDP on defense, helping to catalyze support across NATO for this goal, which, frankly, reflects current geopolitical exigencies. The new goal set by NATO member states in The Hague this week, which we hope to be formally confirmed tomorrow, of raising individual defense spending to 5% of GDP, will ensure that NATO truly will be capable of collectively meeting the growing threats to the North Atlantic region and remain a sustainable alliance for generations to come. Now, even as we work on solutions that will guarantee decades of further shared security and prosperity, we need to be clear-eyed about the external threats that could undermine it. China is, of course, the number one long-term threat to our shared prosperity and security. China's long litany of unfair trade practices, including government subsidies, dumping, forced labor, theft of intellectual property, strategic infiltration of supply chains and critical infrastructure, exploitation of cutting-edge Western technology for military purposes, and cyber attacks on commercial operations. These are not theoretical. They are literally daily events that threaten the economic and national security interests of the United States, Germany, and our allies and partners across Europe and the Indo-Pacific. The scale of these unfair practices is staggering. China's theft of intellectual property is estimated to annually cost American companies as much as $600 billion annually. It's a vast tax on our prosperity, nearly $2,000 on each and every American. But the U.S. is not the only target. A recent report by German digital industry association Bitcoin found the German economy lost nearly 270 billion euros in value last year due to cyber attacks and industrial espionage, a 30% increase over the preceding year. You can do the math. It's over 3,000 euros for every German citizen. Nearly half of these attacks originated from China. They have already done great damage to the American and German economies, and I fear they will further cripple industries in our two countries if we do not act decisively and jointly. We must not acquiesce in the Chinese Communist Party's avowed intent to displace and destabilize. That is not fair trade. Similarly, it is neither in America's interest, nor we believe in Germany's, to maintain critical dependencies on China. For our part, the United States is committed to taking decisive action to prevent China from acquiring U.S. technologies at the expense of the companies that develop them. I suggest that our shared economic well-being depends on a unified response to this threat. We are equally committed to working with Germany to close all pathways that expose our economies and security networks to Chinese influence. That includes defending our digital infrastructure, something that I know you'll be focusing on during the conference here. We strongly support a rising number of efforts across Europe, and especially here in Germany, to block and even remove untrusted vendors from strategic nodes of our telecom networks and critical infrastructure supply chains. All eyes are on Germany when it comes to the 6G build-out. We are hopeful that the coalition's stated intention about using only trusted suppliers soon becomes policy. To this end, we applaud Deutsche Telekom's recent announcement about partnering with NVIDIA, building a sovereign data cloud here in Germany, which will be equipped with over 10,000 advanced US-designed NVIDIA chips. This decision makes German consumers safer and shows that US companies can support our trusted allies' national security goals. But telecommunications is only one part of the puzzle. Neither Germany nor the US can afford deep dependencies on China for critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, power grid infrastructure, or advanced manufacturing inputs. These are not just supply chain concerns. They are questions of resilience and national security. When one country holds leverage over these strategic sectors, the vulnerability isn't theoretical, it's structural, and it is enduring. Having seen the consequences of over-reliance on China and other technologies, we must not repeat those mistakes in biotech. Biotech has extraordinary potential to improve billions of lives across many sectors: healthcare, agriculture, and energy, just to name three. But if innovation is siphoned off and weaponized by bad actors, we will not only surrender a hard-won commercial advantage, we will compromise our own security. That's why we believe US-German biotech collaboration must be built on something stronger than just mutual interest. It rests on shared trust, transparency, and data integrity, as well as on ethical innovation, strong safeguards, and responsible collaboration. I can think of no more inspiring example of this than the collaboration between Pfizer and BioNTech, which married American and German ingenuity to produce a COVID vaccine that saved countless lives around the world. By contrast, companies like BGI and Wuxi AppTec are required by law in China to support China's military and intelligence operations, with BGI on the US entity list for furthering the repression of religious and ethnic minority groups in China. We should not help China develop its military intelligence, surveillance, and cyber-enabled capabilities while violating the human rights of its citizens in the process. Time and again, we have found that coordinated action among allies is the best way to reduce strategic dependencies on China and mitigate security threats. The strength of the transatlantic relationship historically has been about the breadth and depth of the connections between our countries. So even as we work to modernize elements of the transatlantic relationship, my team and I continue to work across all 16 Bundesländer to strengthen the connections between us. And I believe, after a year in Germany, with conversations ranging from the C-suite to city councils, from trade unions to startup founders, that the potential remains vast. Just last month, I visited the headquarters of one of your sponsors, Infineon, in Bavaria. They're one of the world's leaders in semiconductor and technological innovation, deeply embedded in everything from electrical vehicles to cybersecurity. What struck me wasn't just their technological edge, it was how clearly they see their future intertwined with the United States. Their R&D teams in the United States are already driving progress on supply chain resilience, the energy transition, and critical infrastructure security. But that reciprocity runs in both directions. Take US wireless technology developer Qualcomm, which has offices all over Germany and is now integrating German household names like Siemens and Bosch into their tech stacks. Or US pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly that broke ground last year on a next-generation production site in Alzey in Rhineland-Palatinate. When it opens in 2 years, it will create 1,000 highly skilled jobs here in Germany, fully financed by the US parent company. It's a powerful example of what this new era of cooperation can look like, what US-German investment in the 21st century can look like, and it's just the beginning. In closing, over 80 years ago, a transatlantic community, along with an interconnected economy, was built with a clear purpose: to rebuild a Europe poisoned by fascism and shattered by war, and lay the foundation for a democratic alliance strong enough to deter threats from without and prosperous enough to avoid threats from within. Today, that basic architecture holds, but the foundation on which it rests must evolve to meet the current moment and ensure it remains vibrant for generations to come. The decisions made by those in this room, across government, industry, academia, and civil society, will shape the next phase, one defined not only by shared values, but by shared capacity, shared resilience, and shared innovation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I look forward to continuing this vital work alongside you, our trusted partners, and of course with the Aspen Institute. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Fantastic that you're here today. I know that you have to be whisked off pretty quickly to your next appointments, but some of your wonderful team members are going to stay with us. And maybe you could just briefly stand up so that we see who's still with us from the US Embassy, so that you can chat with them during the discussion. So thank you very much again. Yeah. Give him a big applause again. And I think Ellen gave us a lot of food for thought and thought for discussions, and some of them will be an easy discussion, I think, on tech cooperation, for example, and the companies, and some of them might be not so easy discussions when it comes to trade, imbalances, and tariffs. But this is why we have 1.5 days to dig deep into all of these issues.